Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the SANS Institute webcast, Rekt Casino Hack Assessment Transformational Series. This is a four-part series, and today Joe Sullivan will be kicking us off with the first part, Business Security Strategy, Policies, and Leadership Gone Wrong. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Laura. Just one second. Let me get my video turned on here. Doesn't seem to be cooperating with me. There it goes. All right. Should be able to see me now? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webcast. This webcast is to illustrate how Management 514 fits into the transformational cybersecurity leadership triad, along with Management 512, Security Leadership Essentials for Managers, and Management 521, Leading Cybersecurity Change. So the background on this is I wrote a 3-series blog post about a fictional organization called Rekt Casino, how to rebuild that security program in a post-breach scenario. I'll give more background on Rekt Casino here coming up. So this presentation is about how that could have been prevented by utilizing the tools and techniques that we cover in Management 514, Security, Strategic Planning, Policy, and Leadership. So Management 514 is a 5-day course, and there's no way I can possibly include all those elements into a 1-hour presentation. So I'm going to approach this by prioritizing the tools and techniques from Management 514 pretty much in context with the way I would at Rekt Casino had I been hired as the CISO before the breach had happened. Security is not one size fits all. Context is really important as you try to build your security program. I can't take a cookie cutter approach to security without considering the business factors, the values, the culture, and fail to understand what's driving the business and what's important to the business. And that's also very much what this presentation is about. So I'm Joe Sullivan. I'm a SANS instructor. I teach Management 514 and Management 512. Been in information security a little bit over 20 years now, various different roles. Security leadership and a CISO for a bank, currently leading a team of penetration testers, also worked in incident response and forensics. So I've been involved in a lot of different aspects of information security over the years. A little background on Rekt Casino. They're a fictional casino located in Las Vegas. This company doesn't exist. They had a ransomware incident. They had immature IT operations. There's no incident response capabilities there. No formal security program. Security is kind of built into IT. They've been in business approximately 20 years when this breach happened. You know, they thought they were secure because they were in compliance with something called MICS, that's MICS, Minimum Internal Control Standards, imposed on them by the Nevada Gaming Commission. So the ransomware came in over email. You know, there was no spam filtering, no anti-malware, none of that on the email server. It was basically wide open. Once that malware got in, it was able to beacon out, you know, because there were no outbound firewall rules to prevent that. It was basically wide open going out of the network. Memory dump showed that the attackers were using PSExec, PowerShell, and some other unknown executable. They also observed some RDP connections taking place on the network with a domain administrator account. So we know the domain admin account is compromised. During this incident, they were very siloed, right? Except for a back channel conversation between one of the IT team members and a friend of his who was an incident responder at another organization, and she was helping them out while she was on vacation, right? They were very tight-lipped and non-communicative because they were trying to save face. They were unsure of what they were doing and what they were dealing with. But remember, there's no incident response here. This is new to them. It's the first incident they've experienced so far in 20 years. Up to this point, they apparently did a really good job with security, but it can only last so long. Since they were siloed and quiet, the rumor mill started to churn out these wild conspiracy theories. You know, nation state hacked a casino, insider threat, robbery. No one really knew what was going on. These rumors were spreading all over town. To give you an idea of the environment they were working in, there's no policies and procedures. There's no documentation, no network diagrams, no data flow diagrams. There's no BCPDR, nothing to fail over to and recover to. No security awareness or threat intelligence. Now this is important because previously a casino right up the street from them had already been breached by a nation state in this story. Had they been aware of that, they could have at least understood the importance of security and at least done something to secure their network. They were totally oblivious to what's going on in the world. So at a high level, what I'm going to cover in this presentation is my approach for the security program in Rekt Casino before the breach happened. Now I'm going to look at these various phases of strategic planning: decipher, develop, and deliver. Then we talk about the leadership and management competencies to actually lead your team to get all this work done. You're going to see these same terms over and over during this presentation. I'm going to refer back to these. Rekt Casino had what we call the old school approach to security. That old school approach to security relies on the IT team to secure things as they're deployed, right? It's heavily based on technical controls such as endpoint protection, anti-spam filtering, and firewall, very much perimeter based. The IT teams secure things as best they can. There's no one driving security. There's no accountability. And what that usually ends up in is security becoming neglected, right? Rekt Casino had no monitoring and logging as well. They couldn't tell when something bad was happening. In reality is this attacker was probably on a network for possibly a month or longer. They had no idea. The new school approach to security is a more holistic approach, right? We approach that with a business focus, and that includes IT security, regulatory and compliance, the legal and privacy perspectives as a way to manage risk for the organization. This takes an understanding of the business concepts and technical concepts, right? We then take those perspectives and include it in strategic planning, strategic roadmap design, security policy and continual assessment. Then we have the leadership and management competencies. This approach requires an understanding of the business as well as a technology aspect. What we're getting into here is enterprise risk management and not just technology-based security. I'll take this approach because in today's environment, security has to work across the entire organization. If you look at responsibilities of security today in most modern organizations, you're going to find that they work with legal departments, HR departments, compliance and business risks, just as a few examples. And then most businesses today are involved in digital transformation in some way. And that means initiatives like BYOD, cloud, and remote access, especially today. And along with that goes risk assessments, vendor management, supply chain management, and security gets involved with all those activities. So security is very much not just technology based anymore. We're moving out into the entire organization. Strategic planning is more than just creating a list of things to do in security. Strategic planning requires an analysis and understanding of the organization. That analysis shapes strategic plan and includes the organization's vision and mission statements, the risk appetite, and what opportunities do we have for security. On this slide, the three phases for strategic planning are decipher, develop, and deliver. Then you have lead, motivate, inspire to get your team to actually get the work done. All these phases are going to look different depending on the type of organization that you're in. Keep in mind that my approach during this presentation is probably going to look different than the approach you would take in your organization. You have to consider the context and the environment you're working in, the maturity of the security program, and exactly how important is security to the organization. My goals for Rekt Casino are to build a security plan and a strategic plan. The security plan looks at the business objectives, in this case, customer requirements, security compliance, and the privacy requirements. The strategic plan looks at the current state analysis, the gap analysis, the maturity analysis, and then all this analysis and research that we do is used to create a roadmap for security for the organization. Now I'll start with the decipher phase. The decipher phase is important to understand the organization's history. We have to understand what's happened to get to where it's at now. Then we have to determine who the stakeholders are. Then we have to understand the values and culture of the organization because that's going to inform how we operate and get the work done. During that decipher phase, I also want to understand the business strategy and what information assets the casino has that I need to protect. Part of the deciphering phase is understanding the history of the organization. Security and technology have evolved a lot over the years in just any organization. From a historical perspective, the security team also needs to take credit for the work that it's done over the years. A good way to show that and visualize that is a slide like you see here. This shows how the threats have evolved as compared to the investment in technology and security over the years here at Rekt Casino. So I'd get a slide like this in front of the CEO and I would say, Mr. CEO, here's the timeline of 1995 to 2015. On the bottom, the blue line, that's us. We've invested in email, antivirus, firewall, and a VPN over the course of this timeline. Technology has, evolved also. We had the first website all the way out to the Internet of Things. A lot of technology changes have happened over the years. Also, the threats have changed, right? We started out with basic threats. Then we get into organized crime. Then you have your APTs, your advanced persistent threats. Then you have the Snowden revelations, privacy's watershed moment. And then we've had the year of the breach, which is still happening, continuing. More breaches happen. The threats keep increasing. This is what we're up against. This is where we're at. This is the truth, right? This shows from a historical perspective, what is the state of security in an organization. This helps show Rekt Casino has plateaued from a security perspective. In actuality, it would more look like a downward trend because unless you're taking care, with the care, feeding, optimization, investment in security, you're losing a degree of security every day at some level. A slide like this is also beneficial to socialize with the executives and keep in front of the security team so they know where we're at and what's the current state of security. As I decipher the organization, I'm going to identify some important stakeholders, right? This is part of the deciphering process. As you transform from security technologist to security leader, your initiatives are going to impact more people. This is why stakeholder management is really important. How important is it? It can make or break you. Studies have shown that the majority of initiatives and projects that were partially implemented or failed to be implemented were due to poor stakeholder management. Stakeholder management in a lot of organizations is approached like this. We get the security team together and go, okay, who's this initiative going to impact? And we come up with a list of people. The problem with that is that it usually only includes the people that security interact with the most, and we overlook important stakeholders. The other problem with this is when do we usually do this? Well, about 2 days before our initiative and it goes live, of course. That's not the way to approach this. And I've seen this in a large organization last year. On a Thursday night, the IT team decided that it was a good idea to upgrade the Exchange server. And they upgraded the Exchange server. The next day, email wasn't working. Everyone was upset. They didn't manage their stakeholders. They didn't have change management. Their constituents, the executives, the other people in the organization loses confidence in the IT team when this happens. It's harder to get buy-in on your initiatives and your projects. They don't trust you when you do things like this. We have to get better at stakeholder management. And we can use a tool called the SIPOC. On the left-hand side of this slide is the SIPOC tool. And the SIPOC is suppliers, inputs, processes, outputs, and customers. And we start in the processes in the center. Most technology-based deployments have pretty much this same process. Requirements, design, procure, build, and employ, and manage. Each one of these processes has a corresponding input artifact and a corresponding output artifact. The input artifact comes from a supplier. The output artifact goes to a customer. Now let's look at the build and deploy process, second from the bottom. We start there, and then we look at our output artifact. What is the output artifact of the build and deploy process? Well, we have the migration plan and the production system. Who gets that? The business owner, IT and security teams, the vendor, managers, and help desk. Now we're going to kind of work backwards. That build and deploy process has an input artifact. What is that? Technical requirements and system configuration. All right, who supplies that? Vendors, architects, and engineers. And we go down the process list, and we answer these questions for each one of these. And what we end up with is your suppliers on the left-hand side highlighted in red, and your customers on the right-hand side highlighted in red. These are the stakeholders. But we're not done yet. We have to manage these stakeholders, right? Because each one of these stakeholders has a power they can exert on our project or initiative. They have the power of veto, the power of voice, and they have the power of vote. And they have a corresponding level of power and interest. So looking at the power interest grid on the right-hand side of the slide, this 4-quadrant grid, in the left-hand quadrant, on the lower left-hand quadrant, you have low power and low interest. Well, We're going to monitor them. And that's the server team and the help desk. They can give us feedback to tell us how we're progressing. Then we have your end users, keep those informed, HR and legal to keep satisfied. Then in the top right, high power and high interest, the CFO, regulator, CEO, and head of security. We want to manage those closely. As you interact with the stakeholders, it's important to understand the values and culture of the organization, because that informs how you're going to operate as you work through your projects and your initiatives. This process is part of deciphering an organization. Things like, is the culture more conservative or more liberal? That's important to understand, because if you create a conservative policy in a more liberal organization, it's probably not going to be followed. I found this out the hard way one morning. I had hired a former coworker to manage the firewall at the bank where I was a CISO. He'd been there about a month, and I was at my desk early one morning, and an employee, we'll call her Sue, she comes in the door, she usually does, in front of my office. Instead of turning down the hall, she comes in my office, starts yelling and screaming at me, eyebrows furrowed, arms raised, red-faced. Your guy wouldn't let me in the building this morning. He closed the door and made me have to swipe my card. Well, that wasn't the culture here. The culture where my friend Philip, coworker Philip, came from, that was the culture, right? That was a terminable offense if you let someone piggyback in. So why was she so mad? Well, this was her home away from home for between 15 and 20 years. And she came to work one morning and someone said, no, I'm sorry, you can't come in. That wasn't acceptable. He offended the culture. Now imagine trying to work against that with one of your projects or initiatives, but it gets worse. She goes back to her desk with her coworkers in her department who have been there almost equally as long and tells her story. Now the entire department is upset with us. That's what offending the culture does. It's infectious. It spreads throughout the organization. And this went on. It wasn't easy to recover from this. 2 weeks later, they were still upset. We actually had to go get donuts and bring to them, and we caught them in a break room and you apologized profusely and go, here, we're really sorry. And it was like the whole thing happened again. Mad, yelling, screaming. It got out of her system. And everything got better after that. So it's really difficult to recover from offending the culture. Keep that in mind. So you have to be aware of the business strategy and the strategic objectives of the business. I'll start this with a story. There was a restaurant, and I envision it went down like this. The CEO and the marketing team were talking, and the CEO goes, we need to find a way to generate more revenue. And the marketing team goes, I've got this great idea. We'll create a mobile application, and they can order food online, they accumulate points. Each order accumulates more points, they get something for free. And then that keeps them coming back. And the CEO goes, brilliant, make it happen. So the marketing team goes out and they spin up a website, and it works. Revenue's coming in, it's great. A security researcher logs in one day, and he checks his points, and he notices that there's a ID in the URL. He goes, well, that's interesting. Let's increment that. And he does. And he pulls up someone else's account. So he decrements it by 2, and it pulls up someone else's account. He goes, aha, this is an IDOR vulnerability, insecure direct object reference. It's an OWASP top 10. So he does the responsible thing and notifies the restaurant, and they don't do anything. He ultimately reaches out to Brian Krebs, the story blows up, and then they secure it. This is what happens if you're not aware of the business objectives and the business strategy. You lose opportunities to make security adjustments that could have been prevented for like this. So what we have to do is approach this. We've been getting to know the stakeholders. They have business strategies and strategic objectives we need to be aware of. So we can map that out and visualize it with a slide like this. This is how security contributes to the strategic business objectives of the organization. This is an approach that executives can understand. So let's assume that Rekt Casino has a mobile application rollout so their clients can interact with the casino. I could show how security enables this project by looking at this mapping to strategic objective slide. At the bottom of the row is the learning and growth or security capability. This is what security does for the organization. We implement access controls, such as mobile device management. That enables the business to conduct, operations remotely, throughout the casino. We have secure mobile applications, which enable the customers to order tickets, make buffet reservations, enter contests, get casino updates and news. And then the next row up is what we do in security and how that affects the business processes. Implementing access controls results in improved security governance. Mobile device management results in ease of doing business and internal communications. Secure mobile applications result in increased productivity, along with secure mobile applications helping build the company brand. The top row is the financial impact the executives are most concerned with. This is what they're really interested in. We have improved margin, increased revenue, and we're gaining market share. That's important. This is what builds up from what we do in security. Keep in mind that in your organization, your mapping to strategic objectives is going to look a lot different than mine potentially, right? For example, in a nonprofit, you will have the mission at the top row and not the financial objectives. Getting into threat analysis now as I decipher the organization here. As the CISO, I need to understand and identify what the security program needs to protect. That means I need to understand what information assets the casino has. I'll determine this during technology reviews, interviews with other stakeholders, business leaders. And during that analysis, what I'm trying to determine is what are the crown jewels? The crown jewels are the most important data to the organization, what basically keeps them in business. And in security, we often overlook that. The next step is, what are the threats I need to be concerned with? And I can do that and understand that, identify that with a pest analysis. And it comes in the form of this 4-quadrant grid that you see on the left-hand side of this slide. The pest analysis looks at the political, economic, social, and technological factors that can impact the casino from a security perspective or a business perspective. The political factors are such as new regulations for the casino, breach notification is an example. The social, we have people demanding more security, demand for accountability of incidents. Then to the top right, the economic, we have a pandemic economy, increased fines for breaches, then that cost of increased security and reputation damage from the breach. The bottom right quadrant, technological, the industry is moving to a holistic approach to security, right? We need to plan to upgrade these older systems, and we have to leverage cloud to help gain momentum here with our initiatives. And we need additional logging, monitoring, and alerting. Now, along with the threats, of course, come the threat actors. I need to be aware of who are the threat actors. And more importantly, I need the CEO to understand that we have threat actors and they have certain motivations. And I could get a slide like this in front of him to start that conversation that you see on the right-hand side. We have to deal with nation states. Now, we know this has literally happened with the casino in Las Vegas in real life. It was a political statement was made by the owner of a casino. A nation state responded by hacking the casino. Hacktivists, maybe someone loses their savings, their money in a casino, so they respond by trying to compromise the website. Organized crime, they're motivated by financial gain. We've seen enough movies to know that this is a thing. People try to steal from the casino. Competitors, now this was a real conversation I had a couple of years ago. I was working an incident at a casino. Well, it was in a remote area and there were 2 casinos in this area and they were literally across the street from each other. Previous to the 2 weeks up to the incident, there was some foreign nationals seen in the casino, right? Different accent, different dress. And then this incident happened. So this was a real conversation we had to look at during the postmortem. Could this have been the cause? So that's something to keep in mind. Insider threat, espionage, grudge, financial gain. We know that's an issue because we literally have cameras in the casino looking down on everyone. We're looking for someone trying to steal from the casino or do worse, damage systems. Partners, we've seen this in the casino world. Someone manipulate the algorithm on a slot machine, then come in and take advantage of those payouts. So that's going to be on our radar. In the blog post for Rekt Casino, they didn't have any idea who the threat actors were. Right? There was this previous casino breach and they were totally oblivious to it. Using this approach and socializing this with the organization, I can raise the security awareness of what are the threats and what are the threat actors we need to be concerned with. To develop the strategic plan, we have to define the current state of security. This is where we get into understanding the mission and vision of the organization and using a SWOT analysis to understand where we're weak and strong. So the develop phase looks at the vision and mission, the SWOT analysis. We talk about visioning and innovation, security frameworks. We perform a gap analysis. Then we start building our security roadmap, which is followed by our business case and our policy development process. The mission and vision of Rekt Casino are important for me to understand at this point. The mission is what the casino is doing today. Security has to contribute to and help enable that mission. The vision is what the casino is trying to do long term, what it's trying to become. Security also has to work with and enable that vision. Without knowing what the vision and mission are, security won't be informed to help enable the business. Some organizations don't have a mission or a vision statement. So you may see security struggling to figure out what's its role, what's its goal or purpose. If you're in a situation like that, I would recommend getting together with the security team and creating a mission statement for the security team. That helps build a more cohesive team and gets everyone working towards the same goal. I've done this in 2 different organizations now. The last time I did it, the HR department actually came to me and said, I don't know what you did, but this is the most cohesive team we have in the organization. That speaks a lot to building that mission and get them on the same page. It gets everyone going the same direction. It's really beneficial. During the develop phase, it's a good approach to use a tool called a SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis is a strategic planning tool that looks at the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats that we have in security. I have a sample SWOT analysis that I put together here for Rekt Casino. The strengths for Rekt Casino are we have available revenue, we're interested in progressing. The weaknesses are there's no security program in place right now. We have outdated technologies. There's no business continuity, disaster recovery, no trained staff. The opportunities, we can create a formal security program, we can upgrade technological controls, hire competent security staff. The threats, we kind of alluded to this already. We got some bad actors, some insiders, some vendors we need to be concerned with. That is the SWOT analysis. We're going to keep that in mind as we work through this develop phase. Part of delivering the strategic plan for security is having a visioning and innovation mindset. Security needs to be an innovator for the business. We need to think about what's the business and what's security going to look like in the future. What challenges are we going to face? How's security going to be implemented? Let's say the casino of the future goes all virtual, right? How can security be a differentiator from the business from that perspective? We need to be thinking about that as we build our security program. In the grand scheme of things, security has a short shelf life. We can't just maintain what we're doing today and expect it to work a year or 2 down the road. We have to look for ways to get more from what we have now. And how can we scale out with the business and imagine what security looks like in the future? Without that visioning and innovation mindset and that approach, we're going to probably build a tactical plan and not a strategic plan. During the development phase, I also need to determine how are we going to implement security here at Rekt Casino. Now, I want to take a structured approach to implementing security. I don't want to take the ad hoc approach. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. What I need is a recipe for success, kind of like a cookbook for security. Using industry standard frameworks, I can prioritize and communicate security in a way that executives and business leaders can understand. I know I'm already subject to MICS, but that's not enough. MICS is literally minimum internal control standards. The minimum is not going to cut it here. A better approach would be implement the NIST cybersecurity framework in the CIS controls. So on the left-hand side of this slide, we have the CIS controls maintained by the Center for Internet Security. These are the top 20 critical controls you can implement now that stop the majority of attacks. On the right-hand side of the slide at the top, we have the NIST cybersecurity framework. It looks at security from these 5 different functions that we in security basically do: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. This helps us ask, what are we doing today? How are we doing? Where do we want to go? And when do we want to get there? Now, if you look at both these frameworks, there's a lot of actions and objectives to implement. I can't do all this at once. So I'm going to have to take a structured approach over a period of years, possibly. I also need a way to measure maturity of the security program, right? To tell how am I doing and answer that question, how is security in Rekt Casino? This is where the capability maturity model comes in. It lines out 5 different levels of security, starting with the bottom and going up. We have level 1, initial. Processes are ad hoc and chaotic. We're basically running security with heroics and duct tape. Level 2, Processes are more defined, but we're still reactive. Level 3 is where it all comes together and gets more optimized. We have incident response, we have BCPDR, we have security awareness, things are going great. Now, level 4 and level 5 levels of maturity, what organizations that have found is that security becomes a drag coefficient on the business and it becomes more difficult to get things done. Then they actually roll back to level 3. And this is kind of where the better balance is and what the industry is striving for today. Using the security maturity frameworks like this is an approach that executives and business leaders can understand. These are well socialized in the industry and understood. So after this analysis, I want to meet with the CEO and go, this is where we're at. This is the maturity state of security in an organization. And I can visualize that with a slide like this. This measures maturity using the CMMI and the NIST cybersecurity framework functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So I meet with the CEO and say, Mr. CEO, this is where we're at. At the bottom, we have the 5 levels of maturity. Now, the red lagging is where we don't want to be. The industry is an important question to answer for the executives because this is where our peers are, our competitors, from a security perspective. Then you have beyond that, which is leading. So currently, we are lagging in all these 5 functions, right? This is the current state, dark blue. The light blue is a target state. This is where we're trying to go. So we want to improve beyond lagging and identify, but we want to move beyond industry and protect. We actually want to lead the industry and detect, respond, and recover. This is where we're at, and this is where we're trying to go. Now, this is also a good way to visualize areas of underinvestment or overinvestment in your security program. So this is a good slide to have in your back pocket as you build that security program. So we're getting into the strategic roadmap phase of the development phase now. Now that I have a framework for security maturity, I need to build a program within those frameworks. The gap analysis is the core of the strategic roadmap process. The gap analysis looks at the 5 functions of the NIST cybersecurity framework and looks at what are we doing today, where do we want to go in the future, and what do we do to bridge that gap. So take a look at, we have the top, we have the functions, then we have the current situation, the initiatives, and the future state. So take a look at the respond function, second from the bottom. So the current situation is there's no incident response capability to limit the damage of an incident. Now jump out to the future state on the far right. We want to be in a position where we can respond to an incident, limit the intrusion, and determine the cause. How do we get there? Create a SOC, leverage third-party SOC, incident response team or incident response retainer, have threat intelligence and information security sharing programs. And we'll do this for each of these 5 functions, and it comes up with the initiatives that we're going to pursue to increase our strategic plan for security. Now I'll take all those initiatives that we identified, and I'll create a multi-phase roadmap, and I'll present a plan for security for the next 3 years. Remember that I can't do all this at once, right? There's too much to do, and I have limited budget and resources at this point. I'm new to the organization. So in the first year, we're going to work on security policy and governance. Then we get into the vulnerability management program, and that takes us into the second year. Then we have data loss prevention at the end of year 1, takes us across years 2 and 3. Then in year 2 to year 3, we're getting into cloud DevSecOps and a security operations center because we're a 24/7, 365 casino. We need a SOC, right? The next item on the agenda is to get buy-in and budget for this strategic plan. The best approach to build a security business case, I didn't really get into security business cases on here because most organizations have a formal template or approach that they want you to follow. So it's best to follow that one. But I will talk about 3 good approaches for including in that case. You want to look at what business initiatives can security line with and enable. For example, the secure mobile applications, right? If we're trying to roll out secure mobile applications as an organization, security can help enable that. And I can include that point in my business case. What's the cost of security versus the cost of a breach? That's another way of approaching this. Then what revenue can we gain from a security initiative? If that, going back to that mobile application initiative, if that's the initiative and the customers can make reservations and order tickets and all that, that's going to result in increased revenue. I can include that aspect in my business case. Just some approaches to keep in mind there from a business case perspective. Getting into policy development now in the development phase. As the CISO at Rekt Casino, my job is to enact change. Policy is one of the most powerful tools I have at my disposal to help steer the organization in a certain direction. Enacting change is not a fast process, right? Every organization has a pace at which it adapts and accepts change. This is something I have to keep in mind at Rekt Casino. There's no security program here, right? There's a lot of change that needs to take place. I'm not going to be able to change everything I want in the first year, the second year, or possibly even the third year. Changing culture is a slow process and it can take a number of years to accomplish. So what is policy? Policy is the best security no money can buy. Let me explain. Policy is a preventive administrative control. In some cases, it's more effective than technical controls that you can have, right? And it starts with the risk assessment. And what does all this cost? Literally the time it takes to do the risk assessment and create the policies, right? We need policies to enact change, but we also need technical controls, headcount, hardware, and all that takes budget. But I'm the new CISO at Rekt Casino. I may not get that budget at first. They're not going to throw the keys to the kingdom at me as soon as I walk through the door, hand me a blank check or throw loads of money. I'm going to have to win the trust and confidence of the executive team and the business leaders. As their trust in me grows, I can expect my security budget to grow along with that as well. Until then, policy is the best tool I have to drive the security program at this point. You don't want to wait till bad things happen to start creating your policies, right? You don't want to wait until, they rebooted the system during the course of the day and then go, well, apparently we need a policy for that. We want to do risk assessments and identify what policies we need to have in place now. Another good way to approach that is with tabletop exercises, walking through a ransomware incident or an employee termination that took 48 hours instead of 1 hour. What happened? They have a VPN remote access. Walking through tabletops like that helps you identify where you're deficient in policies and procedures. And I have an example risk assessment here on this slide. Just glancing at it, we know provisioning and access controls, the first high risk item in red. We have employees are bypassing the involvement of IT and information security. Clearly, we need a policy for that. Going down to the next one, threat prevention. There's only signature-based threat prevention for malware detection in the cloud. So we need a threat prevention policy for cloud services. This is the approach we want to take as we create our policies. We want to identify them before we need them. So my approach to creating the policies is going to be with security and compliance baked in by design. All the policies I create are going to have the regulations, the laws, the compliance frameworks, and everything else that we need to follow. And I'll also include any SLAs or contractual obligations that the casino has. In this case, I know about MICS, right? But there's also PCI, GPDR, and any other associated laws that we have to follow, especially if we're a geographically dispersed organization. As an information security leader, I can't possibly keep up with all that. So I'm going to work with the business risk and the legal departments because that's their job, is to keep up with all these risks and legalities we have to be aware of. I'm going to include them in a policy development process, so that's included in there. We don't overlook that. So this slide is an example of just a baseline set of policies in a typical organization, right? I'm going to start here just kind of as a reminder of what I should be looking for in my risk assessments and what policies should I be thinking about that we need. After I identify those, I'm going to, what policies I need, I got to figure out which ones do I implement first. And that's an easy question to answer. It's the ones that reduce the most risk first, right? And I'm not just going to sit at my desk and churn all these out, all in the silo by myself. I'm going to meet with other business owners in the organizations, other business leaders, and get their input. How's this going to affect the work you do? What kind of wording do you want in this policy? Do we need a policy steward over here, right? After that's all done and worked out, we might consider just doing a policy steering committee would be a better approach. Then when they're pushed through to approval and are ratified, we will start socializing them through the organization, posters, newsletters, annual policy reviews, security awareness programs. There are multiple ways we can do this, but we need to make the organization aware of the policies we have so they know what to do to protect them from doing the wrong thing. With a strategic plan for security in place, we now have to look at how to deliver that program. This gets into security metrics, a marketing plan, executive communications, policy assessment, policy management. There's a lot of depth to all these topics you see in the deliver phase. While this topic list is shorter than the other two phases, in this day of management 514, in this phase, really sets the stage for making the transition from security technologist to security leader, right? Delivering on a strategic plan for security means showing your value and capabilities as a security leader. This is where you get to prove yourself. I'm only going to cover a few key points from this phase. The reason for that is that Rekt Casino is really immature from a security perspective right now. The goal here is to get the strategic plan developed and get the work started. If you look at security metrics, marketing, executive communications, policy development, assessment, that takes more time. And you have to mature that over time. And it takes more context to apply to that than just developing the plan. And that's the reason why I'm just going to highlight a few aspects of these. To deliver on a strategic plan for security, I have to communicate the state of security in a way that everyone can understand. Metrics is the best language that it's a universal language, right? So I'm going to use a simple metrics dashboard because metrics programs take a while to build up. You just can't do it in a few months or a few weeks. This is going to take some time. So I'll look at this from the perspective of the 5 functions of the NIST cybersecurity framework. Where are we at? Identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. When the CEO glances at this, immediately he's going to see the red and ask, well, what's going on here? Well, our recover, from that perspective, that function, we're in the red. We're not doing so well, but we're trending up. And I'll highlight why we're in the red and what we're doing to make things better. And the same thing at the very top, where we're in the yellow, managing risk to systems, access, data, capabilities. I will highlight out there why we're in the yellow and why we're trending up, what we're doing to make it better. Anytime there's an anomaly in your metrics program, you want to answer those questions. Why is it doing this? And what are we doing to make it better? Over time, as the metrics program matures, I'll present KPIs, balanced scorecards, and metrics dashboards and socialize those throughout the organization. And I'm only going to share metrics which have business strategies or business drivers behind them, and not just metrics for the sake of sharing the metrics. So we also have to market for security now, begin this delivering phase. We need to market for security to build our brand. And what is our brand? It's our products and services, our capabilities, right? From a high level perspective. Things like we in security provide secure email. We provide secure cloud storage. We need to market to our constituents so they're aware of this. So if they need those things, they can make the appropriate request and we can provision them for them. If we don't make them aware, they'll go get this on their own. And what you end up with is shadow IT, and you don't want that, right? We also have to market for our initiatives. This is what we're doing in security to make things better. This is how it's going to impact you, and this is how you get to change what you're doing now to line up with this and not encounter all this that you could possibly encounter. Then we have to market for employee retention. We want to keep the people we have in the organization. We also want to recruit people, right? So we're going to market. This is what we're doing in security, all these cool and great things. We want to market to maintain and establish relationships for the organizations. That's internal relationships and external relationships with our clients and our customers and vendors as well. There's a lot of things to do with marketing for security. You want to keep in mind, as you market your marketing initiatives, you have to know your audience. We have to know what our goal and purpose is. And we have to shape our message accordingly for each one of those audiences. When you're communicating with executives, you want to use concrete terms and avoid acronyms, and don't bury the lead. Start with what's important to the executives first, and then follow up with what security did. Now that I've done all this research and analysis, I've come up with a strategic plan for security. I have to lead, motivate, and inspire my team to get the work done. Leadership and management competencies in Management 514 gets into building effective teams, team dynamics, team engagement, and actually leading the change. Leading teams and individuals is one of the most challenging things that security leaders are going to incur, right? It's the most challenging thing we have to do. We have all these tools for understanding the organization like PETs, SWOT, roadmaps, and we don't have that for people. It takes consistent effort to build these leadership and management competencies. We have to really focus on that. Things like, we can use things like personality assessments. We can send individuals that have direct reports to security leader training or management training, right? You can't just go get security and leadership management competencies from a vendor, and you can't just take a class and come out a leader. You have to really focus on that. But I need to keep a few things in mind, and that's building a positive team culture, inclusion and diversity and the acceptance of others. I don't want a toxic environment. I want them to understand the importance of security and actually what the business does, right? I want them to connect those two. I need to be aware when burnout is a problem. That's another thing. Sometimes your team starts to get burnt out from all these psychological and mental factors to go along with life. You have to reboot your security team member, bring them back so they can start working good, right? This happens. This happens a lot. People get burnt out. And I also need to understand where each team member is in their career and what skill sets they have, because that's going to change my leadership style and my management style for each individual. I won't take the same approach with a seasoned veteran that I will with a new hire, because that won't work, and vice versa. So to close out the presentation, what would it look like at Rekt Casino today, right? We have a security program in place. Security awareness is raised. We have GRC and policies. Incident response is operationalized. When that malware comes in and that end user sees it, due to security awareness program, they don't click on the link. They send it to information security, go, is this bad? Can you check this out? This ransomware.exe looks bad. And security goes, yeah, that's bad, good catch, right? Many security programs do this every single day and nothing is ever mentioned. We've got to get better at calling this out when we make these wins like this. That has value to it. Use it in your metrics programs and start socializing that with your executives and your business leaders. So Management 514 is just a third of the triad of the courses that make up the path for becoming a transformational cybersecurity leader. There's also Management 512, Security Leadership Essentials for Managers, and Management 521, Leading Cybersecurity Change and Building a Cybersecurity-Based Culture. These three courses, along with Management 514, provide the path for leading security in today's modern organizations. This is part one of a 4-part series, right? Be sure to check out the upcoming webcast, part 2 with Kevin Garvey, episode of Management 512 on February 10th. We have part 3 with Lance Spitzner, maps to Management 521 on February 17th. And then you have myself, Kevin Garvey, Lance Spitzner, and Russell Eubanks on February 21st, where we are 24th rather, where we will answer all the questions about the series and explain the perspectives of how this all comes together to create a transformational cybersecurity leader. And I thank you all for attending the presentations, and we'll open it up for Q&A.
Yes, Joe, we have a couple of questions. The first one, how about privacy in the mix, as security plus privacy is the path forward? And this was when you were on the maturity model slide.
So, I'm sorry, I was trying to.
Yep, you were on the maturity model slide.
Okay.
And the question was, how about privacy in the mix, as security plus privacy is the path forward? Privacy,
we have to take account to privacy, especially today. Privacy is a big issue. And I wrote a blog post, a personal blog post about this with about Signal, to move to Signal. The gist of it was, privacy is gone, right? There's no way we're possibly going to get total anonymity and privacy at this point with the amount of data that's already been exposed and the data that's being collected on us. The most that we can hope for at this point, right, is to get something like GPDR, where we actually have control over how our data is used. I think that's our best approach for privacy going forward. Hope that answers your question there.
Perfect. The next question. I'd like to ask about cybersecurity capability maturity model program. How good is it in comparison with the others?
The cybersecurity capability maturity model. Now, the CMMI was actually created for secure development for software, right? We've adopted the principles for that for cybersecurity because a lot of those same principles can be adopted and lined out with your security program. So there's a difference between those two. We're just modifying it for information security and not the software development process.
Terrific. The last question we have, can you clarify the roles of maturity assessment and risk assessment as part of your strategic planning process?
So risk assessment is I'm going to look at things like an employee termination process. What are each steps? So what's the risk if we don't do the employee termination process in this window? What's the bad things that can happen? That's what I'm going to do. What was the other part of that? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Let me go back to it. Let's see. Can you clarify the roles of maturity assessment and risk assessment as part of your strategic planning process?
So during the risk assessment process, what are my goals for employee termination? How long is it going to take me to mature that to where I can terminate an employee within, like, say, 5 hours? May not have everything I need, right? I may have a one-person security team. I've seen that in a lot of organizations where they're overworked, they're overwhelmed. So my goal is maturity, like in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year. Where do I want that employee termination to be? And what's the risk I'm going to incur? And what's the risk reduction over that process? You line that out, present to your executives so they can make that business decision on what they want to invest in your security program, just as one example.
Great. We have another question. Can you elaborate the mapping between risk assessment, NIST CSF, CIS controls, threat modeling / PEST, CMMI in deriving key strategic planning key metrics?
That would take a while to kind of explain. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will save that question. I'll actually answer that in the following blog post for this webcast. How's that?
That sounds great. And so everybody knows there will be a follow-up blog post for this. And in the chat, I'm putting the link to the blog post about the triads, which includes information about the upcoming webcasts and blog posts for this transformational series, as well as the March operational series. And if anyone has any other questions, we'll give it a few seconds to see if anyone types anything in. All right. We'll be on the lookout for the blog to be posted, and we hope to see you or have you with us again next week. Joe, thank you so much for your time, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.